Okay, then, fine. Yeah, so today we are again going to be discussing C++ basics, and this is going to be part 1. So in the next parts, we are going to be covering loops and arrays, vectors, etc. But for now, we are only going to be covering till if statements. Okay, so well, first of all, let's actually talk about why we need to use C++, right? So like Somanshu asked, Somansh asked why to use C++, Python, const, and CP contest. So this is one of the answers. Okay. So the first reason why you should prefer C++ is efficiency and speed, right? So C++ is actually up to 10 times faster than Python. So if some program, let's say, takes 0.2 seconds to one fifth of a second in C++, it's actually going to take 2 seconds. 0.2 seconds will become 2 seconds in Python, right? So C++ takes 0.2 seconds, then Python would take around 2 seconds, which is a huge disadvantage in CP, right? So if some problem says that the time limit is 1 second, then C++ would pass comfortably, while Python might fail, right? So one of the reasons you would prefer C++ is because of its efficiency and speed. It's basically the fastest programming language, right? And the second thing is that it's the most popular programming language for competitive programming as well. And well, it's popular because it's fast, but it's also popular for its inbuilt data structures and algorithms. We'll come to that in a bit, but why does it matter if it's popular, right? You might be wondering why does it matter? Why should I prefer C++ because it's more popular? Well, the reason is if something is more popular, then you're more likely to find resources on that particular language, right? So C++ is more popular than Python, and you will find a lot of articles using C++ for some data structure and algorithms, but you will actually not find many articles for the same in Python, right? Python might have much lesser articles related to data structures and algorithms or CP compared to C++, right? So you are bound to find more resources for C++ if you just search around anywhere, right? So for people who know about Geeks for Geeks, for example, you will know that C++ is way more common than Python. So yeah, that's another reason you should prefer C++. And the third thing is that it has a lot of inbuilt data structures and algorithms, right? And in collectively, it's called STL, Standard Template Library. So collectively, it's called STL. But for example, let us say you want to reverse an array, right? Let's say you have an array. Let me just open this. Let's say you have an array 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll discuss arrays properly later, but let's just say you have a collection of elements 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you want to reverse this thing. Now you have to manually do it if you are actually, not using STL. If you are not using STL, you'd have to manually do this. But with STL, all you have to do is call the reverse function, and then you just enter some parameters related to the array. We'll again discuss all of this later. But basically, it will convert this to 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So it does a lot of different things. You also have something to sort. You also have sets, maps, etc. So we'll be covering all of these in the later classes. So it's much more, it's way more comfortable to use than Python, for example, because it already has a lot of things inbuilt. Python does not have many things inbuilt. So that's a big disadvantage, right? So these are the reasons you should actually prefer C++. Okay, fine. Now, our goal for today is to first of all understand constants and data types. So what are constants, what are data types, etc. And we'll also look at how to take input and output, because that's very important. You have to know that in order to actually solve a problem, right? Then the third thing we are going to learn is the different types of operators. There are many different types of operators like arithmetic operators, assignment operators, and also conditional operators, etc. So we are going to go through all of them, and we are also going to take a look at conditional statements. Okay. Now, by the end of this class, well, our goal is to be able to write simple programs such as, well, let's say you have to assign a grade from A to F, right? So if the mark is 95, then you assign A. If the mark is 75, then you assign B, and something like that, right? So we'll be able to write some simple programs like this. Okay, fine. Let me just read some doubts in the chat. Rupam says, yesterday during the orientation, it was told that after a month our profiles will be reviewed. Okay, So your Codeforces profiles will be reviewed, Rupam, to see how you can improve, how much you have improved, etc. Right. So we are going to like see and personally basically guide everyone on how to, how to improve basically. Okay. Also, Rupam asks difference between Java and C++ in case for CP. So there is not a huge difference actually, but Java is still 2 times slower than C++. So Java is still 2 to 3 times slower than C++. So it's better if you prefer C++. And again, Java is much less popular than, than C++. So that's another reason you'd prefer C++. Do I have to take notes? Sahil, it's completely up to you. You don't really have to take notes. The PPT will be shared. But if you think that it will help you, help you understand things better, then you can go ahead and take notes. Can you provide this PPT? It will be shared after the class alone. Okay, so he says, can we do DSA in Java and CP in C++? Sure, you can do that, but I don't really see the necessity to do that, but you certainly can do that if you really want to. Okay, Priyanka says, once again, just said, Nikhil says, doubt out of curiosity, why is C++ is faster than other languages? So C++ is actually communicating well. It's very, very fast because it is a compiled language, first of all. So there are 2 parts to each, when you run a code, there are 2 parts. First, there's the compilation time. So compilation time. Okay. So basically, this is the amount of time it takes to compile the program. So the program is converted to basically machine language. So it's converted to machine language and then it is run, right? So compilation time is there. And after that is the runtime. Now, well, Java is also partially compiled, but there are a lot of different factors. But basically, when you're compiling something, well, the compilation time is actually not included, right? If it takes, let's say, 10 seconds to compile your code, but when you actually run the code, it only takes 2 seconds. Then, well, CodeChef, Codeforces, etc. Most judges actually say that, well, this is only going to take 2 seconds. Right? They don't say the time taken to run this is 10 seconds, but rather 2 seconds. Right? The compilation time is not included in the runtime. If you take Python, for example, it is interpreted, right? And when something is interpreted, there is no compilation time exactly. Everything is going to come under runtime. So in total, it will be 12 seconds. There will be no compilation time, but the runtime in total will be around 12 seconds, right? So that's a very big issue. And similarly, in Java, it is much, much slower, because I don't think the compilation is nearly as, as fast as, C++ or something like that. Okay. Someone's asking to record this meeting locally. You can do that, Saeed, but you don't have to. You don't have to record this locally. But you know what? Sure, you can you can record it. Go ahead. We will share the link later. After we finish recording, after we finish this class, we'll share this. Can I change between TLE 1.0 and TLE 1.2? You might be able to, they closed it right now, but if you ask them personally, you might get some, someone might help you out in that regard. I can't really help you there though. Sorry. Okay. Anurag says, how does ideal level 1 improvement look like in terms of rating for beginner after the end of 3 months? I'd say that in Codeforces, you'd get to around 800 rating, consistently 800 rating, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how much effort you put in, your aptitude, etc. So yeah. At what extent do we use pointers in CP and DSA? Suhail, you won't use it much, but it's still pretty useful. Like in DSA, you will use it a lot. In CP, you won't use it much at all. So yeah. So Priyanshu says, will we get assistance in how to start giving contests, the ID setup and about everything else? If yes, when? Actually, we'll have a class on Codeforces and how to use Codeforces, etc. CodeChef as well in the next few days, but we won't have anything for ID setup, unfortunately. You can try Googling for some YouTube videos or something like that. Okay, yeah, we should in fact move on to the concepts now, but yeah. Okay, fine. Is everyone ready? Can we move on to the topics now? Okay. By the way, at any point, if anyone has any doubts, please do let me know. Don't worry about interrupting me or anything like that. You can send a comment or you can also unmute and let me know. Okay. Kedar, you didn't miss much. Don't worry. Okay, fine. Okay, just one thing. Sriram says, can I clone your Sublime later? I don't use Sublime actually. I use CLion. So I have never used Sublime. I'm sorry. Sir, if doubts are outside the topics, will it be resolved too? So, Mr. AK, you can ask the doubts like later. Actually, you can ask it, in the server. But I won't be resolving any off-topic doubts, like unless at the very end or at the very beginning. If you ask some general doubts, I might resolve it. But if you ask any off-topic doubts during the class, I won't be covering them now. You can ask me on Discord later now. Okay, fine. We'll go now. Okay. Also, whenever I ask something, please let me know with like a +1 if positive or -1 if negative, depending on your answer. So yeah. Okay, fine. Okay, I guess we can move on then. So the first thing we are going to be looking at is the simplest C++ program. Like this is just the program that everyone first writes basically. So we'll not be discussing like a lot of this. We'll be discussing a lot of this in the next class actually. But we'll be looking at the main part. Okay, just give me 1 second. I'll just do something. Okay, yeah, just give me 1 second. Sorry. There you go. So in this one, in this program that we have here, well, we have, first of all, hash include iostream using namespace std. And we also have int main cout hello world, right? So again, we'll not be like discussing what these things do, basically. We'll be discussing that in the next class. I mean, not the next class exactly, but within the next week. But we'll actually only be coding in here. We'll only be code only here, right? So inside these curly braces, we'll be coding. So first of all, let's just run this to see what happens. This will output hello world, right? So this is basically the output. So this outputs hello world. Now, let us see how we can output stuff later, and let's see how this stuff works later. But okay, first of all, let me stop annotations. 1 second. Let me remove all the annotations. Okay, yeah. So, well, the first thing we need to do before we come to this program over here is realize what constants are. We need to understand what constants are, right? So basically, constants are, well, if you have like a value in math, let's say you have the number 1, right? The number 1 is just a constant, right? You cannot change the number 1. It's just a value that you cannot change, right? So if you have a variable, then the value can change. But if you have a constant, the value is fixed, right? So if you have phi, then phi is just phi. You cannot say phi is equal to 1, right? You cannot equate phi to anything else. So phi is just a constant. Similarly, in C++, we have multiple different types of constants. For example, we have integer constants. Again, this is just like math constants. We can have 4, right? We can have 4, we can have 5, we can have 10, -12, anything like that, right? Also in C++, whenever we are writing a statement, after every statement, we need to put a semicolon. So to denote the end of the statement, we need to put a semicolon so that C++ can understand when to stop, like looking at one line, right? So when to stop a line, how can it figure it out? Well, it can figure it out using a semicolon. Okay, so we can have anything like this again. We can have -12, let's say, -45. We can also have, well, +100. We can also have 0, anything like that. Now, if I run this, it won't do anything at all, right? It's just now doing nothing, right? So here, this line over here, this, this is the path of this. You don't have to worry about this. And this is just the final output, right? Like this is not the output actually. I mean, this is just the ending part. Like everything we see will be in between these two. These two are generated by CLion. Like even if I'm running absolutely nothing, you'll see that these two lines exist, right? So whatever we do will appear in the middle. Okay. So you can see that for this, when I run this though, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens because we are not actually doing anything useful. We are just having these constants and we are not doing anything with these constants, right? Now, similar to integer constants, we also have decimal constants. Like we can have pi 3.14, right? And we can also have 12.0. This is technically a decimal, so that's also possible. We can have 4.3333, something like that. You can also have negative numbers, etc. Right? So these are also constants. So this is a decimal constant. This is an integer constant. Now after that, we also have character constants. Now, character constants are a bit different and interesting. Like you don't find them in math, basically. So if you want to create a character constant, first of all, you put single quotes, right? You put single quotes, two single quotes like this. And then in the middle, you put a single character. So character constants can only have one character, right? You can only have one character. You cannot have more characters. You can't say TX. This is not valid. T1 is also not valid. Anything like this is not valid, right? Only one character is allowed. Strictly one character is allowed. So we can have something like F, phi, or these weird characters, like anything like this. So yeah, there are a lot of different characters that you can have, right? We'll come to this final one later. The final one you will see does have two characters, but we'll discuss why it has two characters later. But yeah, but basically characters can only have one character, right? Character constants can only have one character. Now, unlike character constants though, there is also something called a string literal. So string literals, well, they are not called constants. For some reason, they are just called literals instead of constants. But basically, string literals can have any number of characters. So to create them, you have to take double quotes. Instead of single quotes, you take double quotes like this, and inside you type whatever you want. Like you can have hello world or something like this, right? You can also have numbers. You can have numbers like this. You can also have, again, punctuation, anything like that, right? So this is a string literal. So string literals can have any number of characters, right? String are not called constant because they are mutable. No, that's not true, Nikhil. Actually, these string literals are also not mutable, right? We'll discuss the distinction later. Like we'll discuss the distinction when we come to strings in a bit. But string literals are not mutable. They are not changeable. Okay, fine. So far, is everyone following? Are there any doubts? Anything at all? Please let me know with like a +1 or -1 in the chat. Can you keep single character in double quotes too? Yes, you can in fact do that. So you can have a single character in double quotes as well. But yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah. So, well, those are basically string constants. Okay. Now, well, the issue is that we have seen that there are constants, sure, but well, we are doing nothing with it, right? So even if I run this, it actually does nothing, right? It does nothing in the end. So actually, well, the next thing we need to look at is how can we output these constants? How can we output these constants and how can we use them, right? So first of all, to output something in C++, well, we use the cout operator. That's it. Cout stands for console output. So if you take cout, so you just write cout, and then you put two lesser than symbols. You put two lesser than symbols, right? So you take cout two lesser than symbols, and then you can put any constant that you want. Like let's say I take 1, 2, 3, right? So let's say I do cout 1, 2, 3, and if I run this, you will see that I get the output 1, 2, 3, right? So I get the output 1, 2, 3. Now, if I want to output multiple values in the same line, I can use cout value 1, value 2, value 3, etc. And these will be chained together with these, again, lesser than symbols, two lesser than symbols, right? And one thing to keep in mind is that these lesser than symbols there are no gaps between them. You cannot put a space between them. They strictly have to stick together, right? So I'll cout lesser than 1, 2, 3. And I can also, well, lesser than output hello world. And also again, lesser than, and I can say 3.1, right? All of this is fine. So if I run this, you can see that I get 1, 2, 3. And without a space, I don't get a space here, right? I didn't put a space, so I don't get a space. So I get 1, 2, 3 hello world, exclamation mark, 3.14, right? There are no gaps between them, so it just outputs directly like this. So this is how we can output multiple values in the same line, right? Now, to print something in a new line, we actually use the endl operator or the \n operator. So we can either use the endl or \n operator. Okay, we'll come to both of these later. 1 second though. Samit says, what if we need to print less than 2 times? Do we have to use quotes? What do you mean less than 2 times? Like you want to print all of this in a single thing? I didn't exactly understand, sorry. But yeah, so again, to start printing in a new line, we can either use the endl or \n, right? We'll first talk about endl. So endl, let's say we have something like this. So if I have cout 1, 2, 3, then to use endl, we do this and then we use endl like this, right? So we just cout 1, 2, 3, endl. Now I'll cout again, hello world, endl. Now I'll cout again, 3.14, endl, right? Let's see what happens now. You can see that everything is in separate lines, right? So everything is in separate lines. But if I had removed these, let's see what happens if I remove these. You will see that everything will stick together again. So yeah, you can see that everything has stuck together, right? So if you use endl, it starts outputting the next line from a new line. Okay. No less. Okay, Samit says no. The same command we use less than symbol. Okay, I didn't exactly understand, Samit. What do you want to accomplish? I didn't understand.
Actually, I wanted to tell that what if we need to print the same symbol like cout less than, and we need to print that less than only. So can we use
okay. Okay, yes, you do need to use the you need to use the double quotes. Yes. So if you want to print the less than symbol, you use double quotes. Everything inside the double quotes will be taken as is. No, like if you type something in the double quotes, it won't be counted as syntax.
Okay.
Yeah. Sriram says, is the same as in C for printing with space? Okay, I actually don't know C, so I don't know what you mean by printing with space. But you can use \n in C to start a new line, right? So here we have endl. We can also use \n though. Okay, fine. So we do have endl, but actually there's another thing we can use, which is \n. So \n is actually not like a value like endl. It's not, you cannot call it like this. You have to put it in single quotes or double quotes, and then you have to say \n. So if you take something like this will be counted as a new line as well. So if I run this, you can see that this is still in new lines, right? So each of them is in a new line. So, well, you might be wondering though. So if these are in single quotes, then well, how can I have 2 characters? How can I have 2 characters if these are in single quotes? Well, the reason is because \, here, wherever \ is different from normal slash, this is \, this is normal slash. So you take something like 1/2 like this, but you wouldn't take 1/2 like this, right? So when you are dividing something, for example. So this is a \. So this is a \, and this is the normal slash. Okay. So yeah, again.
Excuse me, can you clarify about my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we have to print hello world and then a space followed by 3.14, what should we give in the syntax?
Okay, so if you want to cout hello world, that's actually a good question. If you want to output hello world, and then you want to output 3.14 as well, but you want a space in between. Well, what you can do is output another thing which just has a character, right? So you can just have a single character in between. You can also put it here if you want, but let's say you want to output 1, 2, 3, and then with the space you want to output 3.14. Then in this case, you just output a space here. Now if I run this one, you will see that we have 1, 2, 3 space 3.14. Is this clear?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. So back to where we were. Yeah, this is a \. And whenever you are using a \, well, actually the next character, if it's a valid character, like there are some specific characters, we'll not be discussing that much now. But if you type \n, for example, C++ will recognize that this is actually a special character. backslash is called the escape character. Backslash is called the escape character because it can escape the next character that occurs and convert them into a single character. So backslash n stands for new line, right? So n is for new line, but if you take directly n, this will be taken as a single character. But if you take backslash n, it will be counted as two characters, right? So it will be counted two characters, and the backslash will recognize that n is a new line character. So n is standing for new line. So it will say, well, we can just convert this to a new line. So this one character and this one character represents a new line, right? So if you take backslash n, it counts as a new line. So it parses it inside C++. So C++ itself parses it to say that this part should not be two characters counted as two characters, two separate characters, but rather as one character. Okay, fine. But if I run this again, you'll see that everything is in new lines, right? So this and endl are basically the same thing. We'll actually discuss the difference later, like in a future class. But don't worry, a lot of things will be discussed in a future class. But yeah, backslash n is also a valid replacement for using a new line. Okay, Rupam says, can you please also mention other escape characters? Okay, there are many other escape characters actually. For example, we have backslash t, which outputs a tab. So let me explain. Let's say I output some string backslash t hello world, right? So if I do this, this counts as a tab. If I run this, you'll see that I have a tab over here, right? So hello world, and this has a lot of spaces in between. Okay. Now, similarly, we also have backslash 0. So backslash 0 and other stuff are not very useful for us. It is used by C++ to do a lot of different things, but we don't exactly use it a lot, so you don't have to worry about a lot of different things. Jignesh says, can you explain significance of color of text in IDE? Okay, those are all pretty trivial things actually, and I don't really use VS Code either, so unfortunately I don't know much. Like you just have to use it a little, and at some point you will actually realize the color significance by yourself. So you don't have to worry about understanding that separately. Okay, fine. So this is basically the output part, right? Is this clear to everyone? Is this JetBrains software? Yes, this is in fact JetBrains. C-Line in fact. Kunal says, I have heard that backslash n is faster than NL, but why? Yeah, we'll be discussing this again in the next class. There is a difference. Backslash n is faster, but you don't have to worry much. Okay, cool. I guess we can move on then. So the next thing we are going to be discussing is arithmetic operators, right? So we have constants, we can output things, but well, those two things alone are not helping us, right? If we are outputting something, then at this point we could have just, what is the use of this program if it just outputs what we give it, right? So we are just outputting what we ourselves hard coded into this program, right? So we just typed hello world and it outputs hello world. That's not anything special. So if you want to do actual calculations, then you have to use arithmetic operators. So there are multiple different arithmetic operators, but generally, there are basically only 5 actually. But basically you have addition, obviously you have addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. And we also have a modulo thing. We'll be discussing what these all are. Don't worry, but we'll be discussing, in fact, especially we'll be discussing what modulo is later. But yeah. So, but let's first just try seeing how these work, right? So let's say I output 1 plus 2, and let's say I also output 2 times 4, 5 times 3, and let's also say 10 by 3. Okay, well, let's come to 10 by 3 later. I'll comment this out for now with 2 slashes. I'll comment this out for now. But yeah. Okay, so first of all, 1 plus 2 gives us 3, 2 times 4 gives us 8, and 5 times 3 gives us 15, which is all expected. Now, if I take something like 10 minus 30, then let's see what this gives us. We'll get negative 20, right? So C++ also has negative values, as you can see here. So yeah, negative numbers are also completely supported. Okay, now let's try taking 10 by 3, right? Let's try taking 10 by 3 and let's see what happens. So if I run this, you can see that I get the output of 3. It's not actually what we are expecting. We should be expecting 3.333, right? Something like this, at least an approximation to 3.3334 or something like this. But we are actually getting 3. And the reason is, if you are dividing two integers, well, they actually always gives back an integer, always gives back another integer. Now, this integer that it returns will not have the decimal part. So it will only give us 3. It will not give us the decimal part, right? So technically you can say that it's the quotient operator, right? So slash actually gives us the quotient. So if I take 10 by 3, that gives us a quotient. Let's say I take 14 by 3, that should give us 4, right? So that should give us 4 here. And yeah, as you can see, it does in fact give us 4, right? So this actually gives us the quotient. Okay, now let me just look at a few questions. What if we divide by 0? Error. So it won't actually be an error, but rather it will just, it will crash or it will be a garbage value. So if you take 14 by 0 directly like this, sometimes it will crash, but sometimes it will give you a garbage value. I'll discuss what a garbage value is in a bit, but basically it will be useless. It will most certainly get you a WA. Okay. How can we comment multiple lines in one go? Just saw you doing. Okay. So in JetBrains, you can actually take, you can select multiple lines like this and press Control/, like in CLine, and it will automatically comment it for you. So that's how I'm doing it actually. Nikhil says implicit type conversion. Okay, we are not going to be discussing those things. I'll just discuss something simpler. Well, one way to get float value is to just take 10.0, right? So dividing two integers always gives back another integer. But if you take at least one floating value, one decimal value, right? By the way, float and decimal are basically the same thing. So yeah, if you take 10.0 by 3, and if you run this, you'll get 3.3333, etc. Similarly, if you take, let's say, 10 divided by 3.0, this will also work the same way. And you can also take 10.0 by 3.0. Like all of these are basically the same thing, right? Okay, someone says, what if I need decimal value too? So if you need the decimal value, you just take 10 by 3. And if you want the remainder, you'll use the modulo operator, right? So if you take 10 by 3, that gives you 3. That's the quotient. Now, if I output 10 modulo 3, you'll see the remainder. So if I run this, you can see that I get the remainder, right? Remainder is 1 when we divide 10 by 3. If I take 14, for example, and if I run this, you'll see that I get 4 as the quotient and 2 as the remainder, right? So 12 is the largest value. So 2 is the remainder and 4 is the quotient, right? So this is the modulo operator. So the modulo operator is the percentage symbol here. And similarly, again, the division operator is the slash symbol. Okay, cool. So yeah, these are basically the arithmetic operators. And one thing to keep in mind is that C++ follows the BODMAS rule, which means that if you take something like, let's say, 1 plus 1 times 2 and something like this, it will not take 1 plus 1 first or anything like that. It will follow the BODMAS rule, which means that it will take 1 times 2 first. So if I run this, it takes 1 times 2, which is 2 plus 1, 3, right? So this gives us 3. If you want to take 1 plus 1 first, then you need to put a parenthesis around this 1 plus 1. So if I run this, you'll see that I get 1 plus 1, 2, 2 times 2, 4, right? So yeah. Okay. Samit says, can we perform arithmetic operations on alphabets to their ASCII values? Yes, that is in fact possible. So if I take a character, let's say F, and let's say I take plus 1, right? So if I run this, you'll actually see that, okay, first of all, this will become an integer. And the reason is because characters are just integers by default, right? But let me show you, if I take F plus 1, and if I convert this to an integer as well. So don't worry much about how this works, but basically this takes the value that you have, the character that I have here, and this will convert it to an integer. So if I put this parentheses int over here, this will convert F to an integer, right? So if I run this, you'll see that I get 102 here and 103 here, right? And this 102 is actually the ASCII value of F. if I go to Google here, and if I search ASCII values and go somewhere over here, you'll see that for F over here, the small f, I have 1 or 2, right? So small f here does have 1 or 2. Okay, let me zoom that. Okay, one second. So yeah, you can see that 1 or 2 here has the value of f, right? So if I convert that to an integer, that gives me 1 or 2. Now let this stay as a character. But whenever I take f plus 1 here, I'll convert this to a character. Let's see what happens. If I run this, you can see that I get G, right? So right after F, I have G. So I can in fact perform arithmetic operators like this. Like I can take F plus 1, F plus 5, let's say. I can also do that. That would be K. I can also take F minus 1, which should give me E, and so on, right? So it is in fact possible to perform arithmetic operations on alphabets. Okay. Rupam says, does Java also follow the BODMAS rule? Yes, Java does also follow the BODMAS rule. Okay, fine. Yeah, so these are basically the arithmetic operators. And yes, characters can, you can in fact perform addition with characters. Now, one thing though is that I talked about the garbage value, right? I talked about the garbage value. And basically, let's try taking FF, something like this. We know that a character should only have 1 character, but if I take 2 characters, see what happens. I basically get some random thing over here, right? It's basically random. Similarly, if I take something like this, if I just run this, you can see that it's so weird, right? It's just any random value which we cannot directly predict, right? So this is considered to be a garbage value. Now, the garbage value can sometimes, like, depending on whether value is defined or not, this can also be called an undefined value, right? So this is undefined. And yeah, so you call it UD or something like that. You can also call it UB, which means that it's it's not valid basically. So a lot of different acronyms are there, but basically if you see garbage value, undefined value, something like this, then it's basically a random number that we cannot predict. Okay, so Shubham says, what happened when we don't apply character? So what happened when we didn't apply character is that we took plus 1, and what happened was that this character was converted to an integer. This character was converted to an integer because when you took plus 1, C++ thought that, well, this guy is taking this f and he's assuming that it's an integer. So I'll just output the thing as an integer as well, right? So it takes 102 plus 103 and it outputs 103. And when we convert it to a character specifically, like this, then it works, right? Then it outputs the character, not the integer. Yeah. Okay, fine. Is everything so far clear to everyone? By the way, if at any point you have any doubts, you should let me know. Okay, please do let me know if you have any doubts. Okay, fine. I'll actually wait for a few minutes and then we'll continue. If anyone has any doubts again, please do let me know. Lakshya says, why only character is converted to int? No, why not vice versa? Well, actually, it depends on how C++ actually defined its precedence, right? So basically, C++ generally said that character will become an integer, but integer will never become a character. Like they just defined it themselves. We cannot do anything about it, unfortunately. So they have just said that character is built upon integers, so characters come first, right? Characters are on the top. But if you want a more primitive type, would be integer. Okay, so Jignesh says, for operations like square root or squares, operations would look like So for square root, there are actually separate functions. I'll just show you that separate, like I'll just show you that function. Like you can take like hash include math. And then you can take square root and you can take a value like 5. Right, this is possible. You can take something like this and this will give you the square. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Can you re-explain division and modular operation? Yeah, sure. So once I'll explain it now. So let's say I have 10, right? Let's say I have 10 and I want to divide that by 3. This will be the quotient. Now if I take 10 modulo 3, this will be the remainder. So modulo is the remainder, like division is the quotient, modulo is the remainder, right? And if I run this, you can see this, right? So yeah, so 3 is the quotient and 1 is the remainder. Okay, Nikhil says, will we get daily problems today? We will get some problems today, yes. And also, do we need to remember precedency and associativity table? You don't really have to remember that, no. Like, you know, just basic idea of these things will be enough. Okay. Kedar, what do you mean by we can use STOI? I didn't exactly understand where you want to use that. Okay. Jignesh says, can we compute perform operations on complex numbers? Yes, but I will not be discussing that now. Sorry, I'm very sorry. I will not be discussing complex numbers or anything like that. And it's very basically useless for C++. I mean, for CP in general. So yeah, we are not going to be discussing that, unfortunately. But you can DM me later on Discord. I will provide some resources for you if you want. Okay, Soul says BODMAS doesn't include modulo. So what is the modulo operator's precedence? So in BODMAS, we have like a BODMAS, right? So here you can also say that like modulo comes at the same level as division and multiplication. Like it's the same order, right? So if I take something like 1 times 1 modulo 3 times 4 by 5, then 1 modulo 3 will happen first, 3 times 4 will happen next, 4 by 5 will happen next. Something like that. Okay, Arun says your Discord username. I'll send it in the chat. There you go. That's my Discord username. Okay, Anurag says there are very minor syntax rules which are not often used. Is it necessary to remember every rule perfectly? Something like modulo doesn't work with floats, etc. So you don't have to remember every rule, Anurag, but you know, if you made some mistake, your compiler will tell you. So you don't have to worry about that. You just need to know some very important ones. Like, you know, we'll not discuss, we haven't discussed any important ones so far, so there's nothing to say. But when you come to bit manipulation or something like that, you will see that there are some things you certainly do need to remember. But yeah, but the thing that you mentioned is not very important because again, the compiler will tell you like that it's not allowed. Yes, Kera, we can use it to convert a string to an integer. STOI, I mean. Okay, yeah. Okay, fine. So we have also discussed arithmetic operations now, but basically all we have done so far is we haven't actually, you know, we have just converted C++ into something like a calculator, right? So we are just using C++ to perform some basic operations like addition, subtraction, etc. Right? We are not actually using it to do anything useful. So in order to actually do anything useful with it, we need to use variables. And well, variables are pretty simple. You might know a lot about it from math already, but they are just containers that stores a specific type of data. Right? So basically what it does is it stores a specific type of data, which means that if you want to give it an integer, it can only store integers. If you want to give it a string, it can only store a string. If you want to give it a character, it can only store a character, right? And so on. So variables can only store specific types of data. And they can in fact be modified with the assignment operator. We'll come to that in a bit. But the syntax to create a variable is to first type the data type and then the variable name equal to value. So the data type part we'll be discussing in a minute or two. But let's first talk about the let's just take a simple one. So a simple data type could be int, right? So int is standing for integer here. Int is equal to integer. Now I can say int variable name. I'll just name the variable x equal to 5, right? Now I can do something like cout x. This will work totally fine. So if I run cout x, you can see that I get the output of 5, right? Now, similarly, I can take x equal to 7. So after I declare it with x equal to 5, I can change x to another value. So if I take x equal to 5 and then x equal to 7, you can see that x changes from 5 to 7, right? So we have 7 now. Now the next thing is that if you have like, let us say x directly like this, right? So when you have x directly like this, generally, this value is undefined. So this is like undefined value. This is an undefined value. And if you output x, like if you run it locally, sometimes you'll get 0. Like you can get 0 like this sometimes. But when you actually submit it somewhere, you will see that you will probably have an error, right? You'll probably have a runtime error or wrong answer or something like that. So generally don't leave it undefined, always set it equal to some value, default value, something like that. Or you should take input immediately. We'll come to input later. Okay, redeclaration error. Arun, there won't be any redeclaration error. If I just say x equal to 7 like this, right? So when I say x equal to 7 like this, there won't be any error. But I will say when the redeclaration error comes, don't worry. Okay, Samit says, can x equal to 5, 7? No, that is not possible. This is not valid. This will be an error for you. If you want, though, you can create another variable y equal to 7, something like this, but you cannot say x equal to 5, 7. Okay, fine. Yeah. So this is the basics of a variable, right? So variable can be created, it can be changed. You can also do stuff like this. You can output x times y. You can also say x equal to x plus y. And what this does is it says x equal to the first value of x is 5. The second value here is 7, right? So it takes 5 plus 7. And then when I output x now, you'll see that I get the value 12, right? So 7 plus 5 is 12. So x times y is 35. When I output x after doing x equal to x plus y, you can see that I get 12. Now after this, I can again output, I can maybe take y equal to y times x, something like this, right? So this will be 7 into 12. Okay. If we also output y, you can see that I get 84, which is 7 into 12, right? So I'm saying that x equal to 5 plus 7, which is equal to 12. And here I'm saying y equal to y, which is 7 over here, y is 7 over here, times 12, which is equal to 84, right? So this is basically how it works. I can use a variable to do a lot of different things. Okay, now, first of all, variable names cannot have spaces or anything like that. So there are some rules for variables. You cannot have absolutely anything, right? So you cannot have spaces in the variable names like x space y. This is not allowed. X space y or something like this is not allowed, right? Similarly, it cannot start with a digit. You cannot say 5x or something like that. Now, let us say that you want to name your variable hello world, right? You want to name it hello space world. But how are you going to do that if you are not allowed a space? Well, what programmers realize is that an underscore, if I use an underscore, it pretty much looks similar to a space, right? So if I'm taking hello world like this, this hello underscore world pretty much looks like a space. So whenever you want to denote a space in your variable names, you can use an underscore. Now, again, you are not allowed to use like 5 hello world or something like that. This is not allowed. Like C++ does not like it. It will give you an error, right? So this over here, you can see is an error. Now, the third thing is that it cannot actually already be reserved by the compiler, which means that you cannot use anything that the compiler already thinks is a defined value, right? You cannot say int. Obviously, this will not work, right? Int does not work. Int using or something like this does not work. Using is also a compiler value. You can also not use namespace or anything like that, right? So you can only use values that have already been you cannot use values that have already been taken by the compiler. you can only use any different value. Like you can use ASD, something like this. You can use X, Y, Z, anything like that, right? Keywords. Yes, that's right, Manohar. So anything that's already reserved by the compiler basically means that it's a keyword. So actually, let me add that here. Keywords not allowed. Okay. Yeah. Now the final thing is that the variable name cannot actually be taken by another variable. Now, in the same scope part will be discussed later. But basically, your variable name cannot actually be taken by another variable, which means that if I have int x equal to 5, I can say x equal to 7, right? X equal to 7 does work, but I cannot say int x equal to 7. So if I do int x equal to 7, and if I run this, you can see that I get an error, right? I get an error because I cannot redeclare a value. I can change the value, I can replace that value, but I cannot redeclare it. I cannot use any variable name that has already been used, right? Similarly, I can also not say it is a character x equal to 7. That's also not allowed. I cannot say float x equal to 7. This is also not allowed, right? Anything like this is not allowed because I'm not allowed to use the same variable name multiple times. Okay, cool. So that's basically all the rules, honestly. But there is one more important thing, which is that keywords and variables are case sensitive. So what this means is that I cannot say, like, let's say I have int x equal to 5, then I cannot say cout capital X enter, right? This will not work. So to better demonstrate this, let's say I have hello equal to 5. I cannot say capital hello like this. This will not work. This will not work because hello is different from small hello is different from capital hello. Even if I only change the last O to a capital O, this will still not be allowed. You need to use the exact same thing in order for the value to be actually used, right? So if I use hello like this will work. Similarly, I cannot do this with cout or anything either. So I cannot use co capital UT, right? This will also not work because, well, the compiler thinks that different cases, lowercase or uppercase, is a different character. Okay, fine. So these are basically the rules for variables. So it must not have spaces. It must not start with a digit. It cannot be reserved by the compiler, nor can it be taken by another variable. Okay. Kudal says data type character and declaring ASCII value. Will this work? Yes, it will in fact work. You can take character C equal to something like 102. We know 102 is equal to F, right? So if I output C here, you'll see that I get F here, right? So F is over here. So yes, you can assign this to an ASCII value. Sambit says, can int be a variable? Int can, in fact, like int cannot be a variable. You cannot name another variable int or something like that. Like you cannot say int equal to 5. You can say int I equal to 5 or something like that. You can say int. Oh, okay. Yes, capital int is allowed. Yes, it is allowed somewhere. So capital int is completely fine. Okay, cool. Okay, these are basically variables. And okay, now the next thing we'll discuss is data types. Okay, is there a difference between int and int? Int is not int. Like, okay, int is the reserved value. This is how we create the variable. This is something completely different. It's not even related to int, right? So it's just any variable name. I can name this it, int, anything like this. These are all just names. Is scalar. These are all just names. Int and capital int are completely different. Like int is reserved, capital int is just a variable name. Okay, fine. So the next thing we can discuss are data types. So data types are basically used to set the type of a variable. Like we see, like we saw here, we can use int to say that a value is an integer, right? So I can take int a equal to like something like this 5, but I cannot say that a is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this is like if I run this, you can see that this is an error, right? This is in fact an error. We cannot convert these two properly, right? So it is not allowed. So you cannot use an integer to set it equal to a different value. And if I use something like a float value, 1.4 or something like this, and I output A, this is technically allowed, but you will notice that, well, 1.4, the 0.4 is gone, right? So we are only left with 1. So if you don't use a proper data type for the proper value, you will find data loss, and you will probably, you are very likely going to like get WA if you don't use a proper data types. Typecasting, you mean over here, like this? I didn't understand, Ashish. What do you want to typecast? Oh, yes, this is in fact allowed, but it will still give us the same result. It will still give us 1. So, yeah. Truncating or rounding off. Nikhil, it truncates. It does not round off, it truncates. So if I take 1.7 even, it will still truncate. So you can see that it's still 1, right? Even if I take 1.99, it will still say 1. You can see that it still says 1, right? Okay, yeah. So again, like we have integer, similarly we have float, right? We can use a float to use float to store decimal values. So if I want 1.99, I just have to say float A equal to 1.99 and it will work fine, right? So this is another data type. But let's first look at some details about the data types. So data types set the type of a variable. And again, int is used to declare integer variables, for example. But there are actually 2 types of data types. The first type is called the derived data type, and the first type is called the primitive data type, and the second type is called the derived data type. Now, these are pretty different. Basically, primitive data types are the original data types. You can think about it like the original data types. You have integers, you have characters, etc. Like if I scroll down, you'll see some primitive data types: integer, character, bool, float, and we'll come to this later. But basically, these are all primitive data types, which basically means that again, they are basically the core thing. They are predefined. Yes, Manohar. They are built into the core of C++, right? So there is no definition for them because C++ itself is made out of these things, right? So we have int, we have character, we already know that. We have float, double, long double, also they all exist, but we'll be looking at the details of these in the next few classes. But we also have something called a bool. So I'll quickly go through what a bool is. A bool can either be true or false, right? So bool can be either true or false. Now, true is represented with a 1 and false is represented with a 0. Now, like what this means is that when I output something, it will not output true, but rather it will output 1. If I run this, you'll see that for true, it outputs 1, right? And when I take false, it will output a 0. And yeah, there you go. You can see that it does in fact output a 0, right? Okay, cool. So these are basically primitive data types. Again, we have int, char, bool, float. And there is a special data type, which is void. And yet again, I'm very sorry, a lot of things will have to be discussed in the future classes. Because void is only used with functions. We have not discussed functions yet. So this will have to be, we'll have to wait for the next class in order to discuss this. Okay, Ashish says, is there any keyword for storing string data type? Yes, for storing string data type, you have to use the keyword string. That's it. But I will come to that in a bit. Because actually string is not a primitive data type. String is actually, if you go here, you'll see that string is actually a derived data type. String is not a primitive data type. String is actually derived from characters, right? So string is derived from characters. So technically string is not, string is not a primitive data type. Even if it is built into C++, it is built using a character. So it's not one of the original data types, right? Similarly, we have other things like vector, map, set, priority queues, etc. We'll discuss all of these in the future classes, but these are all part of STL. So we talked about standard template library, right? For data structures and algorithms. So all of these over here, all of these things over here are part of this STL. So yeah, we'll have separate classes for STL in the future. Okay. Reassess is the number Boolean, is the Boolean of any non-zero number 1. So yes, the Boolean of any non-zero number is in fact equal to 1. Which means that if you take 1, 2, 3 and convert this to a bool, this will give you a 1. If you take minus 1, 2, 3 and convert this to a bool, it will still give you a 1. But if you take bool of 0, this will give you false, right? So 1 is true, 0 is false. So bool of 0 is 0. But if you take anything else like 1, minus 1, 2, minus 2, anything like that, anything at all, you will get a positive 1. Okay, fine. So the next thing we can take a look at is string, right? So string again is not equal to not a primitive data type, because I can actually go to the definition of this string over here. And again, please ignore all of this, like everything that you don't understand, just please ignore them. But look at this part that I'm highlighting, right? So this part that I'm highlighting here is a basic string of characters. So you have basic string of characters, string, right? This basically means that string is actually derived from characters. String is using characters in order to store values, right? So string is a bit different to characters. And strings are in fact derived from characters. So they are not primitive data types, they are derived data types. Okay, can you explain bool again? Bool again? Yeah, Shobit, I will explain bool again. So if I see out 1, 2, 3, let's say I also put 1, minus 1, minus 10, anything like that. And I convert all of these to bool, right? I convert all of these to bool. And I also convert bool 0 to bool. If I run this, you can see that all of these are 1. And we know that 1 means it is positive. 1 means it is true. And 0 means it is false, right? This basically tells us that 1, 2, 3, 1, minus 1, 10, etc. are all considered to be true, right? So all of these are considered to be true. Now, only 0 is considered to be false. Everything except a 0 is considered to be true. In fact, even if I take like 1.1, bool 1.1, you'll see that that's also true, right? If I take 0.1, that will also be true. So you can see that when I made 0 into 0.1, that was also true, right? So everything except 0 is a true. And Booleans can only be true or false. Okay, fine. So far, is everything clear to everyone? Any doubts at all? Bool false. Okay, Sambit, bool false is going to give you, well, 0. So if you take bool false, that is going to give you 0. There you go. Okay, please let me know with +1 if you understand everything that has been discussed so far. And if you have any doubts, you can let me know with like a -1, or you can just type out the doubt as well. Okay, Nikhil says, how did you write bool in the multiple lines at the same time? Again, this is a feature of CLion. Like, you know, when I press my scroll wheel, and drag, you will see that multiple cursors come up, right? And after I do this, I can draw, I can write everything over like that. So I can delete all of this like this. I can delete all of this, something like this. So yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Bool, anything apart from false will give 1. Yes, Samit. Bool apart from anything, apart from false or 0 is technically considered false as well. Anything except that will give you 1. Yes. Are you using VS Code? No, Shobit, I'm using CLion. I'll write that in the chat. I'm using CLion. There you go. That is not VS Code. Okay, fine. I guess we can move on then, right? Okay. So the next thing we have to discuss is input in C++, right? So we have done all of these cool things so far. We have done oh wait, okay. I skipped over. Okay, sorry. We do need to discuss operators, other operators, sorry. We'll get to input in a bit. So, well, there are actually other operators, like we saw plus, minus, all of those things, right? There are actually other operators like plus equal to, minus equal to, star equal to, and so on. And I'll explain how they are used. Let's say that you want to take x equal to x plus 5, right? Which part should I explain something? Sorry. Okay. So I have x equal to x plus 5. I can also have, let's say, x equal to x times 5, x equal to x minus 5, x equal to x by 3, or something like this. So I can have a lot of different things like this. But you can see that this is getting repetitive very fast, right? This is getting repetitive very fast. So what I can say is x equal to, in C++, they said that x equal to x plus can just be replaced with plus equal to, right? So I can just say x plus equal to 5, x into equal to 5, x minus equal to 5, and x by equal to 5, right? This will be the same as the other thing. Okay, so this will be like here, this will be x equal to x plus 5. These two are the same thing basically, right? So these two are the base thing, the same thing, x equal to x times 5, x equal to x minus 5, all of these are the same thing, right? Now, one thing to keep in mind though, when I do x by equal to 3, this will never be x equal to 3 by x. This will never happen, right? Because the order matters. Similarly, for minus equal to, this will also never be x equal to 3 minus x or anything like that. It won't be 5 minus x or anything like that, right? So this will never be like, one x comes first, right? So if you take x minus equal to 3, x comes first and then 3 comes. Okay, this will be 3 here. Sorry. Okay. Now, again, if I take something like x by equal to y, this will always be x equal to x by y, not y by x. Y by x will never ever happen. X will always be equal to x by y, right? Okay, Suhail says, does it impact the computation speed? No, it does not impact the computation speed in any way. This is just a way to type it fast and make it clearer. Okay, fine. So yeah, we can use these operators and it will work the exact same way. Let's just output x just to make sure that this is in fact the case. Let me output the x after each operation and let's see what it does. So we have first 10, which is correct. Then we multiply by 5. So that's 50. That's correct. Then we have minus equal to 5, which is 45. That's also correct. And finally, we are dividing by 3, which is 15, which is yet again also correct. Okay. Kunal says x plus equal to 1 and x plus plus. Okay, I will come to that, Kunal. Like the next thing is that. Don't worry. Okay. Now, similarly, one final thing that we have is x modulo equal to. This is just again pretty simple as well. Like this just says x equal to x modulo 3. So x will be assigned to the remainder, right? So if I take x equal to, let's say I have 17. If I take modulo 3, that will be 2, right? 17 more remainder when divided by 3 divided by 3 is 2, right? So when I run this, you'll see that I get 2. There you go. Okay, cool. Okay, fine. So these are basically the arithmetic assignment operators. So they are just called arithmetic assignment operators because I'm doing arithmetic and also the assignment at the same time, right? So yeah. Okay. So the next thing that we have is unary operators. So all of the operators that we have looked at so far are working with 2 characters, right? 2 operands. 2 operands basically means that if you have 1 plus 2, 1 is one operand, 2 is another operand, right? Similarly, if I'm taking, let's say 1 times 3, 1 is an operand and 3 is also another operand, right? And again, I can provide many examples for this. Let's say I also take 5 by 2. 5 is an operand, 2 is an operand. So these are all operands and there are multiple operands, right? There are at least 2 operands in all of the things that we have discussed so far. But operators that only need 1 value or operand are called unary operators. Now, you might be a bit confused, wondering, why I have plus minus again, because, we already saw that plus minus is an arithmetic operator, right? Plus and minus are arithmetic operators. So why are they unary operators at all? Well, the reason is pretty simple. Let us say that you have -5. In math, you just have -5. Then in this case, this negative is working on only one operand, right? Similarly, if you have +10, this plus is only working on one operand, right? So in C++, you can actually do this by taking like int a. If you take int a equal to 5 or something like this, then you can output -8. And this will output my -5, right? Obviously, it's going to output -5. So I can also do something like a equal to -a. This is also fine. And if I output a, again, I should get -5, right? So this is a unary operator because there is only one thing that I'm focusing on right now, right? There is only one thing that I'm doing. So this is a unary operator. Similarly, I can take a equal to +a, which does absolutely nothing because +a will not change the value in any way. So this will just be still 5, right? So I have 5, a equal to +5, which is just 5. So that's 5 in the end, right? So these are both unary operators. So yeah. Now, we also have other unary operators such as ++ and -. So by the way, I'll just say that plus and ++ basically have nothing in common. Nothing in common. And similarly, minus and minus also have nothing in common. Okay. Then why we use them? Well, plus is not necessary at all, but minus is pretty useful, right? And plus is just there because, well, you know, they are just making C++ as similar to normal math as possible. Like this should technically be possible, right? So if you take +5 in maths, let's say that you say that 5 times 10 is equal to +50. You are not wrong, right? This is correct. +50 is technically correct. We just omit it when writing it, right? Similarly, in C++, they just said that, well, we'll also just implement that functionality because why not? Okay, fine. So the next thing again we are discussing is ++ and -. So let's take a look at ++ and then we'll come to -, because they are very similar. So whenever I take ++, what happens is that I'm just taking a equal to a + 1, right? So this is again, yeah, I'm either taking a + equal to 1 or I'm taking a equal to a + 1, right? So a ++ is just another shorthand way to do the shorthand thing already. So a equal to a + 1 was shortened to a + equal to 1, and this has been shortened to a ++, right? And you can see that when I take a equal to 5 and a ++, I get 6, right? I get 6 because a ++, well, that increases 5 to 6, right? So yeah, so I can take int a equal to 5 and a ++, and that will become a 6. Similarly, I can take ++a. This will also give me 6. So a ++ is valid, ++a is also valid. But there is actually a difference between them. You are right, Arun Kumar. So if I take ++a, this is actually called, let me take another variable b equal to 5, and let me do b ++. This is called pre-increment. And this is called post-increment. This is called pre-increment because I'm increasing this first. And then post-increment is because I'm increasing this next, right? I will discuss the differences. But for now, let's just output a and b, and we'll see that both of the values are the same, right? So is there actually any difference between them? Well, yes, there is in fact a difference between them. I'll come to that now. Let me say that I am outputting a ++, right? I'm outputting a ++, and then I'm also outputting b ++. Okay. Okay, I'm outputting ++a, sorry, I'm outputting ++a and b ++. Well, when I'm outputting ++a, well, let's see what happens. Let's just look at the difference. If I run this, okay, I'll output that increment done. And these are the final results, right? So this is when I'm incrementing and this is when I'm finally outputting. So if I run this, let's see what happens. You can see that I get 5 for b. I get for ++a, I get 6. For b ++, I get 5. And when I output it the next time, I get 6 for both. Right? How does this work? How is this working? Well, it's actually pretty simple. When I take ++a is increased first. Then a is used, right? So a is increased first and then a is used. But in the second case, b is used first. Then b is increased, right? So this is a pretty big difference. So pre-increment means that you are incrementing first. Post-increment means that you are incrementing later. So, and pre-increment, you can see that plus plus happens first. In post-increment, you can see that plus plus happens next, right? So plus plus happens first in pre-increment, which means that A is increased first, right? So what happens is that 5 becomes 6, and then we use 6. Here though, B is used first. So which means that we first use 5, and after that we increase, right? So the moment we use 5, we increase it, and then the next time we print it, it becomes a 6. So this is initially a 5 because when I take B++, it is first currently equal to a 5, right? When I took B++, it's currently equal to a 5, and then it is equal to a 6, right? Does it make sense to everyone? Is this clear to everyone, by the way? Is post-increment and pre-increment clear to everyone? Please let me know it like a +1 or -1 in the chat. Again, the difference is that A is increased first and then A is used in pre-increment, and in post-increment, B is used first and then B is increased, right? +1. Yeah, nice, Arun Kumar. Okay. At the end, how come B again became 6? So Sambit, basically what happened was that after I did B++, at the end here, it's already equal to 6, right? When if I had taken B++ outside like this, you will see that it's equal to 6. You can see that here this is also equal to 6. But when I output B++, then it is equal to 5, right? So basically what's happening is that after B++ is done, it will increase. But before B++ is done, I am already taking the value. I'm doing C out B++, which means that I'm taking C out B and then B++. Kunal says, does that mean in B, when we print B, then it will update? No, it will not update when it is printed or anything like that. For example, let's just say that I take B equal to 5 and B++, and then I output, like let's say I take int x equal to B into 5, right? So let's say I take B into 10. Okay. Now if I output B, if I output X, it's not exactly related to print or anything like that. You can still see that here it is 60, right? Which means that B into 10 was 6 into 10, which means that B was 6. Is this clear, Kunal? Okay, cool. Yeah. So the increment happens after the output. Change it to B++. Okay, when I change it to B++, the only thing that will change is that here the 5 will become a 6. Where does the usage of pre and post increment differ? I'll show you an example. But yeah, okay, you can see that 6 and 60 are outputted, right? Not 5 and 60. So when I take plus B++, it was 5 and 60. This 6 will become a 5. There you go. Okay, so an example of where this is used is like when, let's say, you have another variable, right? Let's say you have another variable x equal to, you want x to be equal to b, but at the same time you want to increase b. So you'll take b++ like this. So that is a possible use case. Then I can also take plus b like this. This is also fine, right? So if I run this, you'll see that, okay, let me output x. You'll see that x will be equal to 6 here, but when I do this, it will be equal to 5, right? So this is just the use case. Now you can obviously, you don't need this exactly. You can also do this by just taking some if statement, or maybe even just waiting, assigning first, increasing later, something like that, right? So when if I wanted something like this, I'd just say x equal to b and b plus equal to 1. I don't really need plus plus or anything, right? And if I want x equal to plus plus b, I'll say that b plus equal to 1 and then x equal to b, right? So this is possible. But generally, well, it's not very necessary, but it's just a nice thing to have. Apply this plus plus b. Okay, Arun Kumar, I didn't understand. Sorry. Could you unmute and let me know what you're trying to do? I mean, I didn't really understand what you're trying, unfortunately.
So I'm trying that we can use the ++1 in loops to increase 1 by 1.
Oh, okay. Arvind, I was not talking to you actually. I was talking to Arun. Sorry. Yeah, but we can in fact do that. Yes. So we can actually take for, like Arvind said, we can take for int I equal to 0, for example. We'll come to for loops in the next class again. I'm sorry. But if let's say I have something like this, like don't worry about how this works if you don't know. But this will increment it one by one, right? So it is used in for loops a lot. Arun, where do you want me to apply that? Sorry, again, I didn't understand. But yeah. Okay, fine. Is everything so far clear to everyone? Any doubts? Again, you can let me know it like a +1 or -1, something like that. Okay, fine. Yeah, I guess we can move on then. So the next thing we are going to be discussing is input, right? So what we have been doing so far is again still a glorified calculator. We are just using C++ to do some basic calculations, right? Why not use a Google calculator? Why not use anything else? Like, why not just use your phone calculator, right? We are using C++ just as a calculator, which is pretty stupid, right? So what we can do instead is, first of all, we can try taking an input, right? We can do various different types of calculations, not just like a normal calculator does, right? I can take int A, and let's say I have to take input of this int A. Then how I can do this is pretty simple. So in C++ again, to input a value, you just have to take C in instead of C out. We did C out A to output it. So we'll do C in and greater than symbols, two greater than symbols. For C out, we had lesser than symbols. These are opposite. So for C in, we have greater than symbols, and then we'll say value. We'll say C in A, right? We'll C in A, and obviously we'll put a semicolon after it. Now, I will say C out A. Let's just see what happens, right? Let's see what happens when I run this. So when I run this, you can see that this is waiting for my input. Now, if I enter something like 7, you can see that I get the output of 7. When I enter 13, I get output of 13, right? Arun says, is patterns used in CP? Yes, patterns are very useful in CP. Like, I mean, depends on what kind of patterns, but in general, patterns are used. Like, you have to recognize patterns and stuff like that in order to solve many problems. Those are called constructive problems, by the way. Okay, so similar to this, similar to C out again, we can actually take multiple inputs at the same time. So if you have A, B, C, you can input A, B, and C like this. And let's try outputting A, B, C here, right? Now, one important thing to note is that each input value must be separated by a space or a new line. You cannot, you cannot separate it by just nothing. You cannot separate it by nothing, right? You cannot say that, like, you cannot tell C++ to, you cannot give C++ 1, 2, 3 and assume that it will say 1 is equal to A, 2 is equal to B, and 3 is equal to C, right? That is not possible, unfortunately. Okay. Now, one second. What we can do though is give it multiple values separately, right? I can give it 1, 2, 3, 3 to 1, and okay, that was not 3 to 1. Sorry, I can give it 1, 2, 3. 1 second. 3 to 1, and also let's say I give it 22. Then you can see that I get 1, 2, 3, 3 to 1, and 22, right? That's totally possible, right? Does this make sense? Now, we can also separate it by space, by the way. I can give it 1, 2, 3, 3 to 1, 22 like this as well, and it will work fine. Also, I can give it multiple spaces. I'll show you this in a second. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So I can take 1, 2, 3, enter, 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 22, enter, enter, 33. This also works, right? Even though I have so many spaces. Similarly, I can say 1, 2, 3 and have a lot of spaces, 5, 4, and lot of enters, 22. This also works, right? So no matter how many spaces there are, well, you can still take those values separately. That's totally fine, right? So this is how inputs basically work. Preeta says, why does it work like that? So the reason it works like that is because, well, C++ just decided that the way they are going to take input is by ignoring, like they just use these spaces as separators, right? And no matter how many spaces there are, it is just counted as one separator. No matter how many new lines there are, it's just counted as one separator. Oh, got it, because we defined it as int. No, not necessarily because just int. Actually, if you take string ABC as well, Preeta, you'll see that if I enter hello world XYZ, this is not taken as one string. This is actually taken as 3 strings. Hello is taken as 1 string, world is taken as the 2nd string, and XYZ is taken as the 3rd string. We cannot separate it by space directly like this. Now, there is a way to take input of sentences if you have to, but again, I'm very sorry, we'll be discussing this in the next class, right? Because we are already running out of time. Like it has already been 1.5 hours actually, but a lot of these things will be discussed in the next few classes. Don't worry about that at all. Okay, and response is if you are taking string as input, will spaces supposed to be character of the string? Like separator, I mean, no, so, okay, character is not, it's not counted as a character. So if I take hello space world space XYZ, it only takes hello one word as hello, another word as world, and the 3rd word as XYZ, right? So in fact, you have to use something called a getLine function to take input like that. I don't want to explain this in too much detail, but I will just show you, right? I'll just show you. If it doesn't work, don't worry. Like if you can't use this properly, don't worry. It does get a bit complex. Like we need to understand input in a lot of detail to understand this. But I can do getLine scene comma A, getLine scene comma B, getLine scene comma C. And if I run this, now this will take input of sentences. Hello world XYZ, XYZ, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This will work. And I can give it something else. And I can also give it hello world. And you can see that these are taken as 3 separate sentences, right? Yeah. GetLine is slow. Arun Kumar, unfortunately, like it is slow, but you will never use it in competitive programming. Like 99.9% of the time you won't use it because most probably realize that getLine is pretty slow and you know that is pretty stupid. So they don't do that. Don't worry about it. But yeah. Okay, fine. So this is basically the input part. Okay, now let's just have a quick check your understanding quiz, right? So can someone try solving both these problems and tell me the answer? First, let's try solving the first problem. How will you declare a character equal to an exclamatory mark? For people coding in Zoom, by the way, you need to press Shift Enter to create a new line. Like if you press Enter, it will send the thing, like send the message. If you take 1, 2, 3, Shift Enter, 1, 2, 3, Shift Enter, 1, 2, 3, and so on, it will take separate lines. So if you want to type your code in separate lines, press Shift and Enter. Don't just press Enter directly. Okay, Naveen, are you sure that is correct? Okay, Ashish accidentally missed a character, accidentally missed A there, but that is correct, Ashish. Anurag, Rupam, Priyanshu, Vineet, Lakshya. Okay, this is going way too fast for me to read it. Rita, Kunal, etc. Okay, everyone has basically got it. That's very good. Akash, you are using double quotes. You need to use single quotes actually. So everyone who is using double quotes, keep in mind that double quotes is for strings, right? Double quotes is for strings. This is for a string with multiple characters. Now this single thing is for only one character. Yeah. Okay, Sahil took it a step forward by creating a main function even. One thing you forgot, Sahil, is that main function needs a parenthesis, but everything else is basically correct. Okay, people are doing the second one, I think. I'll just show the second one then. Okay. Okay, Ashish, that's basically correct. But how are you going to do the last one? We also have to print A by B as a decimal and not as an integer. Float A by B. Shobit, that's good. That's correct. But is there any other way we can do this? A.0. Ashish, that does not work. Unfortunately, there is nothing such as A.0 or anything like that. That does not work, unfortunately. It would be a cool feature though. But yeah. we use float. Alok, that's exactly right. We can use float for that, right? We can do two things. When we are solving the second problem, we'll take a comma b as input and output 3 values, right? I'll take int a comma b. Either I'll take int a comma b, c in ab, then I'll output a plus b, I'll output a times b, and I'll output float of, I'll float this a by b, right? So these all work. This works completely fine. But another way to simply we do this is just to not use type conversion or anything like that. Is just to say that I'll just take float a comma b, right? I'll just take float a comma b as the type, and then I'll just directly take input as a float and I'll output as a float, right? So I'll take int a comma b and convert it to a float later. That's also fine. But you can also do this. You can also take input itself as a float and then you can divide it, right? So both of the solutions are completely fine. Vineet, there is no thing such as AF. There's no thing such as AF or BF. Can't we use F? No, that's not allowed. That does not exist. That will be counted as a variable, right? So unfortunately, no. A into 1.0 can also be done. Yes, Nikhil, that can also be done. So if you take int A, that's also another valid solution. So you can take times 1.0. This will convert A to a float and then we'll divide by B. Yeah, this is also completely fine. But float would take extra memory than in. Rishi, you don't have to worry about memory much for now. Like as you solve harder and harder problems, you will find that it's pretty important to care about memory and stuff. But for simple problems, like till due to C at least, you don't really need to worry about memory and stuff like that. Is DSA used in CP? Yes, Arun, DSA is used in CP. In fact, CP is mostly DSA because algorithms are used a lot in CP. So okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay. Oh, the person who said AFBF came from JS. Okay, JavaScript has that. What? I don't know JavaScript. I don't think I want to learn JavaScript anymore. Oh God. Okay. Arun Kumar says, if we cover CP, can we do DSA prompts? Yes, Arun Kumar, you can most certainly do that. Okay, JavaScript is so weird. What? You can do AF, you can put F after a variable name to convert it to a float. Okay. Okay, Shubham says, can't understand A into 1.0. So basically what happens here is that when you multiply by 1.0, I told you, right? Like character becomes an integer, right? Something like that also happens with integers. Like integer becomes a float. When you multiply it by another float, when you take int multiplied by float, when you take int into float, it will say that, okay, to prevent the loss of data, I need to keep this as a float, right? So yeah. Okay, wow, apparently it's in Java too, but anyway. So that's why A into 1.0, when you are multiplying like A into 1.0, this will become a float and you will divide by B. So yeah, when you divide a float by B, that will be counted as a decimal value. Okay, fine. Yeah. You don't think so, okay? Oh, okay. Someone tried it in console and apparently AF/BF doesn't work. I don't know. Well, okay, I'm a bit confused now. I'll research into this later. But yeah, but for now, let's continue with the class. Yeah. Okay. Can I also use B into 1.0? Yes, you can use B into 1.0, but you need to be a bit careful. This is a very good question, by the way, Shubham. If you take B into 1.0, and if I run this, let's see what happens. Let's say I take 10 by 3, 10/3. You can see that I don't get the float, right? And that is because of BODMAS. So what it does is it takes A by B first, and then A by B multiplied by 1.0. Now A by B is already an integer, right? 10 by 3 will already be an integer. So this will be 3 into 1.0, right? That won't work properly. since it follows BODMAS, it will be a bit weird. So if you're doing that, you need to take this in parentheses. If you take this in parentheses, now if you take 10.3, you will see that it works, right? So please keep this in mind. Like BODMAS is very important, like in a lot of different places, like when you're multiplying by 1.0 and all of that, put parentheses when you're in doubt. Okay, Lakshya, basically, if you take A by B times 1.0, you are taking integer by integer times float, right? So I did say that if you take integer times float, this will be saved as a float, right? But the issue is integer by integer will happen first, right? So I have A by B, which is integer by integer, which would be 10 divided by 3 multiplied by 1.0. Now 10 divided by 3 will be counted as 3, right? 10 divided by 3 will become 3. And after that, you multiply by 1.0, which will be equal to 3.0, right? But if I do it the other way, if I just put a parenthesis over here, if I take I into I multiplied by F, I divided by I multiplied by F, except I put a parenthesis over here, notice that this will be 10 divided by 3 into 1.0, which will become 10 divided by 3.0, which will be equal to 3.333, right? Is this clear? Because this first is turned into an integer. The data is lost and then you are multiplying by a float. It gets truncated and then you multiply. But here you multiply first and then you divide, right? If this is not clear for anyone, please let me know. Okay, you know what? Let's just have a quick check. Is this clear to everyone? You can let me know with a +1 or -1. Okay, but again, if anyone has any doubts, you can let me know at any point, by the way. Okay, cool. Everyone is following so far. That's very nice. How many decimal places it will have? Akash will be discussing all these things in the next class. We'll be discussing this when we are discussing limits of floats and stuff like that. Okay, fine. So the next thing we are going to be discussing is conditions and relational operators. So conditions basically return a Boolean value depending on whether the expression that you give it is true or false. Okay, what does that mean? So first of all, let us say that we want to check if 1 is equal to 2, right? It is clearly not, we know, but let's just say that we want to check if 1 is equal to 2. The math notation is kind of like this. You put a question mark above the equal to symbol, but the issue is that we don't have math. We can't put equal to question mark above the equal to, right? So what C++ did is that they said, when we want to check if two values are equal, we'll just use two equal tos. If 1 is equal to 2, basically means that we'll return true. This is true if LHS is equal to RHS, right? This is true if LHS is equal to RHS and false otherwise, right? So we'll return false otherwise. Now, again, we can also have something like 1 not equal to 2, right? And this will basically be the same thing. I'll just paste this over here because it's basically the same thing, except that this is false if LHS equal to RHS, right? Okay, or I can say that it's false if LHS not equal to RHS. It's true if if LHS is not equal to RHS. So if 1 is not equal to true, then it becomes true, right? If n is not equal to 2, then it is true. And if n is equal to 2, then it is false, right? So this is again like saying that, let's say a man has 5 chocolates. Let's say a man has 5 chocolates, and I'm saying that he does not have 5 chocolates, right? Well, if he does not have 5 chocolates, then my statement is true when he has 4, 3, 2, 1, anything like that, or 6, 7, 8, 9, anything like that, right? So basically, when I'm saying that this man does not have 5 chocolates, then it is true if they are not equal, right? So if he does not have 5 chocolates, then it is true. Otherwise, it is false. So similarly, when I'm saying 1 not equal to 2, I'm saying that, well, this man does not have 2 chocolates. And if he has 1 chocolate, then it is true. But if I'm saying that if this man does not have 1 chocolate and he has 1 chocolate, then it is false, right? So 1 not equal to 1 is false. and 1 not equal to 2 is true. So 1 equal to 2 is false. 1 equal to 1 is true. 1 not equal to 2 is true. 1 not equal to 1 is false. Right. So these are just the opposite of each other. So like 1 is equal to 1 is the same as, this is the same as, like 1 not equal to 2 is the same as 1 equal to 2, and I'll take the not of that. I'll come to that later. But if I take the opposite of this, then it is the same thing, right? So these are conditional operators. Similarly, we have relational operators. Now, relational operators are pretty simple. Let us say that I have 1 less than 2. This is clearly true. 1 less than or equal to 5. This is also true. 5 less than 5. Well, is this true? Can someone tell me whether this is true or not? Is 5 less than 5? No, false. Exactly. So this over here is false. But what about 5 less than or equal to 5?
True.
True. Yeah, exactly. So this is true, right? So this is less than or equal to, stuff like that. So, and let's just take some more examples. 6 greater than 5 is true. 6 greater than or equal to -1 is also true. We can also take 6 greater than or equal to 6. This is also true, etc. Like there are like a lot of different ways, but basically we have less than, greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to, right? So these are our relational operators. Okay, fine. So yeah, these are basically our relational operators. And honestly, these are pretty simple, right? There's nothing much here. But let's just put this in code and let's just take a few examples. Let's just say that I have int x equal to 5, y equal to 6. Let me output x not equal to y. And this again will output true if they are not equal, and true is considered as 1, right? So it will output true if it is not equal, and it will output it as 1. So if I run this, I should get 1. There you go. Now let me make them equal, and now I should get 0. And yeah, there you go. I get 0, right? Now let me take equal to simple. Now I should get 1, right? Because 5 is equal to 5. Now let me take this is equal to 7, and this should be false. There you go. It is in fact false, right? So these are basically the different things that we can do. Okay. Now, the next thing that we have is logical operators. Now, logical operators, okay, one second. Shubham says, why can't it print true instead of 1? Shubham, I don't know. You should ask the creator of C++. Unfortunately, he decided that it will output 1. So we are stuck with that. Okay. So we have logical operators, and basically logical operators perform, well, basically different Boolean operations on expressions, right? So what this means is that we have multiple logical operators. We have ampersand, ampersand, and we have 2 expressions. I'll say what an expression is. One second. Okay. Okay. Now, yeah. So if I take expression 1, okay, Girish Rao. Oh, okay. Okay. Apparently that exists. I'll come to that later. That's like a fun fact. Okay. Actually, XOR is not there, Arun. Logical operators are only AND, OR, and NOT. There is no XOR. There's no like XOR in C++. Like technically there's no XOR. Like that's a bitwise operator. You're confusing bitwise operators and logical operators. Okay. So basically, an expression is what I described before, right? So an expression is basically something that over here, basically, if I have something like, let's say, a less than 2, like, or 5 less than 7, right? If I have something like 5 less than 7, I can say and 6 less than 8, right? And what this does is it returns true if both of the statements are true. If both of the statements are true, the final output is true. If one statement is false, well, the final output is false. If even one is false, if this is true and this is false, it's also false. If both are false, again it is false. Right? So all of these are considered false. So if 5 less than 7, well, this is considered true. If 6 less than 8, this is considered true. Right? Like both of them are true, it's true. But let's say I have something like 9 less than 8. This will have false, right? So this side is true, this side is false. So the entire output will be false. Okay. Now let's take an example. Let us say that I have x equal to 5, I have z equal to 10. Now let's say I have y equal to 7, right? Now I want to check if x and y, like y is between x and y, right? So I want to check if the y is between x and z. So in this case, what I'll do is say that y must be greater than x, but y must also be lesser than z, right? So I'll say x is less than y and y is less than z, right? So x is less than y and y is less than z. This means that both of it should be true. So if both of them are true, I output true, right? If I run this, I get 1 because 7 is in fact between 5 and 10. And if I take something like 11, this will not work. If I run this, you can see that this does not work, right? This is false because, well, y less than z is false. 11 is not less than 10. And similarly, I can have 6. And if I run this, this will be true again. So if I run this, it will be true. If I take 3 though, this will be false, right? Similarly, I can have OR statements. OR returns whether either of them is true. It returns true if either of them are true. So if I take OR, then this is true. This is also true because one of them is true, right? So if one of them is true, the entire thing is true. This is also true and this is false. Okay, cool. Now, let's take another example for that, right? Let us say that x must be less than y, but y must be greater than z, right? So x is less than y or y is greater than z. In other words, like this. Okay, so x is less than y is false here because 5 is less than 3 is false, 10 is less than 3 is also false. So if I run this, I should get 0, right? So I should get 0 if I run this. There you go. Now if I take this as 7, x is less than y is true. So I get true as the entire output. So x is less than y is true, z is less than y is false, but I don't really care. So I get 1 here, right? So let's now take, let's say 17. Let's say I take 17. Now both of them are true, right? So I get true again. Now let's say this is actually 25 and this is 17. Now only this statement is true. 10 is less than 17 is true, but 25 less than 17 is false. But since one statement is true, both of them are true, right? Like the entire thing is true. So that is the OR statement, right? So that is the OR statement. And finally, we also have the NOT expression. This just takes the opposite of whatever you are giving, right? So this is 1. If I run this, I get a 0. So if I get true, I get false. If I get false, I get true, right? So let's say this is 25 as well. Now this, both of these are false. So if I take the NOT of them, I get true, right? So this thing here is false. If I remove the NOT, it will be false because both of them are false, right? Now if I take the NOT of them, that will be true, right? So that is what I was saying before over here somewhere. Okay, never mind. But basically I was saying this, right? Like NOT of A is equal to B is the same as A not equal to B, right? So if I take NOT of A equal to B, that's just A not equal to B, right? So I just have this. Okay, now these are basically logical operators. Now the next thing that we have is conditional statements. Now conditional statements basically execute a different block of code depending on the Boolean value of some condition, right? So what this means is that if I have, let's say, int x equal to 5, let's say I also have int y equal to 7, and I have z equal to 10. Now I'll say that if x is less than y and y is less than z, right? If x is less than y and y is less than z, I want to go in here. I want to do something. Well, I'm going to do this using an if statement, right? Because if statements are pretty important. Sometimes you need to do things depending on some condition, right? So if it's windy outside, or if it's cloudy outside, if it's sunny outside, you go outside. If it is raining, you don't go outside, right? So something like that. There are a lot of things in our daily life is based on if statements, and we need to use if statements in a lot of different places in programming. So here, one such use case again is checking whether two, like y is in between two values here. So here I'm outputting, let's say, y is in between, right? Now, otherwise, I want to say, cout y is not in between, right? So this statement will happen when both of these are true. Like when this is true and this is true, or basically this condition here, this expression here, if this entire thing is true, this if statement will go in, right? It will say y is in between. So you can see that this is y is in between because y is equal to 7. Now let's say this is 13. Then it will say that y is not in between, right? If I take 4, it will again say y is not in between. But if I take 6, it will say y is in between, right? So this is basically how if statement work. Now, let us say that we have this case and okay, I will use the same, okay, I will use the same example, 1 second. Let's say I have an age, right? Let's say I have age equal to, let's say, I'll take the input of the age, right? And I want to say that if someone's age is greater than 65, then they are a senior citizen, right? So they get some benefit, let's say. So they get senior citizen benefits. Now, let's say that the person can also be disabled, right? So bool disabled equal to, okay, I'll also take input of this. So if I enter 1, that means they are disabled. If I enter 0, they are not disabled, right? Okay, election problem is greater than 18, then eligible to vote. Okay, I'm actually trying to show if else if statement actually, Arun Kumar. So this is a good example, I think. So if age is greater than 65, I want to give them senior citizen benefits. Else, if they are disabled, else if disabled, if they are disabled, I want to give them disabled benefits. Right? I want to give them disability benefits. And otherwise, I want to give them no benefits. Right? Let's say we have something like this. Now, they only get one type of benefit, right? They don't get both benefits at the same time. That's not valid. So, see, the person first tries to get a senior citizen benefit. Like if age is greater than 65, they get a senior citizen benefit. If they are disabled, they get disabled benefits. Otherwise, they get no benefits, right? So in a if-else statement, basically, at most one condition can happen, which means that if age is greater than 65, after this is done, skip immediately to the end of the statement, end of the if statement, right? So basically what happens is that if I enter this, I immediately jump to this line. I immediately jump to the end of this, right? I don't go through else if disabled. I don't go through this thing. I directly jump to the end, right? Similarly, if I enter this, I again jump immediately to the end. The else statement does not happen. So basically, either one of them happens or none of them happen, right? Like exactly one of them happen, but if you have an else statement, exactly one of them happen. Okay, so let me run this and show you some examples. So let's say the age is 50 and the person is disabled. Then they get disability benefits. Now, let's say they are 75 and they are not disabled. They get senior citizen benefits, right? Now, let's say they are 75 and they are also disabled. Then they are again going to get senior citizen benefits only. They are not going to get both, right? But let's say the person is 45 and they have no disabilities. So they have no benefits, right? Does it make sense to everyone? Does this, is the if-else statement clear? Is this clear to everyone? Please let me know with like a +1 or -1 in the chat. By the way, I can like join many of these together. I can have multiple else if statements. Like I can have one condition, the second condition, third condition, and so on. We can have thousands of conditions. It doesn't really matter. Okay, cool. Apparently it is in fact clear to everyone, which is something I'm very happy about. Nice, nice. But yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. So yeah, those are basically if statements. So we have if, else if, and else. Now else happens when none of the else if statements or if statements happen, right? So if this didn't happen and this didn't happen and this didn't happen, this happens. Please explain else if again. Which part, Jignesh? Which part do you want me to explain again?
Sir, the disability benefits last part.
Oh, okay. So actually, I duplicated this, like ignore that. But basically, if age is greater than 65, they get senior citizen benefits. If they are disabled, then they get disability benefits, right? But first, if they get senior citizen benefits, they cannot also get disability benefits. Otherwise, like if they don't have either, they get no benefits, right? Basically, this is how it works. First, I ask if they are, okay, let's say there's a person, right? So let's say there's a person. I ask what their age is. They say their age is 70. Then I say immediately you get senior citizen benefits, go away, right? That's it. You only get senior citizen benefits. That's it. Now let's say their age is 50. Then I will ask them what their disabilities are. And let's say they say they do have disabilities and they say something, right? Then in this case, I say you get disability benefits. Now, if they say they don't have any disabilities either, then I say you don't get any benefits at all, right? So first I ask for age, then I check age, then I ask for disability, then I check disability, then I give them no benefits. Okay. What if we put continue in if age greater than 65? So there is no continue actually in if statements. This does not work. This will be an error. So we need that does not work. Can we write else statement before else if statement? No, Arvind Kumar, that is not possible. Akash says we are taking disabled as input. What if someone gives the value of 5 as disabled? Okay. So when I said that true and false, so true is equal to 1 and false is equal to 0. Well, that is when I convert true and false to 1 and 0, right? But actually, if you take actually true, like if you take the value 5 and convert it to a Boolean, this will actually be true, right? Anything except 0 or false. If you take anything except 0 or false, this anything that is not 0 or false will be equal to true. Okay, let me show you in a different code, right? Ignore all of this. Don't worry about this. This is my template. I'll be explaining this again in the future sessions. So if I take like bool of 7, then let's say I take bool of 10. Then I say let's minus 10, 0.5. And let's say I give it 0 and I give it false. Then I give it true, right? You only these two will be false. You can see that everything except 0 and false is true, right? So if someone gives disability as 5, then it's going to be taken as true. Akash. Okay, in this sense is when age less than 65 and he is disabled, what happens? So when age is less than 65, then this condition is not true. So it checks whether they are disabled or not. So if they are disabled, they get disability benefits and then they continue to the end of the state, right? So like if I run this, let me say they are 30 years old and they have a disability, then they get disability benefits, right? Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, fine. And honestly, that's all there is to if else statements. Okay, now there is one final thing that we do need to discuss, which is scope, right? So this will be discussed in a lot of details in the future classes. But for now, all you have to know about the scope is that scope is created when when a pair of curly braces are added, right? So in this statements here, this here is a scope. This also here is a scope, and this is also a scope. And in fact, this entire main statement, this is also a scope, right? Whenever you have curly braces, it creates a new scope. And what the scope means is basically that if you have a variable inside, you cannot use that variable outside. This does not work. I have a variable inside ASD equal to 5. I cannot use that variable from the inside outside this scope. But if I have something outside, let's say I have XYZ equal to 7, then I can output XYZ inside. This will work, right? Global variable and local variable. Yes, in fact, that is correct, Arun. That is correct to some extent, right? We'll again discuss this in a lot of detail later. But basically, this is the basics. Like you have curly braces. If you have something inside a curly brace, it cannot be used outside. But if you have something outside the curly brace, it can be used inside, right? This is like a box. Like if you are inside the small box, let's say, okay, let's think about it like this. Let's say a person is very tall, then he can see all the shorter people, right? But the shorter people need not necessarily see all the taller people, something like that, right? So I don't know. I'm just trying to provide some analogy. So what's inside cannot be used outside, but what's outside can be used inside. Okay, let me just write that down. Outside can be used inside. Inside cannot be used outside. Right, that's it. Okay, fine. So this is honestly all there is to a scope. And like you can also create your own scope actually. Like this is also a scope. Like I can also say this is a scope, right? So yeah. So whenever someone wants to separate some pieces of variables, they can use multiple scopes like this, right? Because everything in here will be undefined outside, right? So when I have int equal to 5, it will not affect me outside. So I can create another scope and create another a equal to 7. So this will completely work fine. Okay, fine. Yeah. Now we do have another check your understanding, but because we are running out of time, I will share the PPT later. Please do try this on your own, but we'll not be discussing this now. Okay. You can also send this in the server and you can ping me to, get my feedback on your codes. Like TLE 1.1 people are doing that right now. You might have noticed, but yeah, like you can ping me on the server and I will give you some like feedback regarding your code. Okay. But this is the exercise, right? I told you you will be able to do something like this after the class ends. But your goal now is to write a program to take the marks of a student as an input and output the grade, right? So you take 0 to 35 is fail, 35 to 50 is like E, 50 to 60 is D, and so on, right? And so on. Like, okay, please don't do this now. I won't be looking at it now because again, the session has to end. So yeah. Do you have to tag you or TLE 1.2? Just tag me. Okay. Please share PPT. I'll share the PPT very soon, Nikhil. Don't worry. When will daily practice problems drop? They'll be sent tonight. Like not like in a few hours, actually. 2 or 3 hours. Don't worry about it. Okay, which app are you using for writing? This is called Obsidian. And in Obsidian, I'm actually using a plugin called Excalibur. Excalidraw. So there's a plugin called Excalidraw inside Obsidian. Like it's not that hard. You can just Google this and you can figure it out. So yeah. Where will the recording be available? The recording will be available on the website. You will be given a YouTube link as well. Don't worry. But more details will be given later. Okay. Nikhil says general guidance required. Can you recommend some books and articles for beginner levels? Okay. Books and articles. First of all, I never read any books to learn CP, honestly. So I have no idea which book you should go through. But there is a good book called CP Handbook, right? So you can try to take a look at it. I'll send it in the chat, CP Handbook. So you can see that book. Okay. Not yet solved any question on code forces, but done 40 questions on lead code, which are easy and good. Okay. So basically, I just suggest trying to do more problems. Like for now, you don't have to worry too much about learning new things because you just have to do constructive problems for now, right? Don't worry too much about it. And also, okay, what math topics are required for CP? Like in the future, you will require permutations and combinations. You'll also require a lot of number theory like GCD, LCM, like basic number theory, something like that. Okay. No, that's totally fine, by the way, Nikhil, don't worry about it. Yeah, website link for recording. It will be shared, Jignesh, don't worry. It will be shared in the server. Like, I don't know much about this myself, unfortunately. Okay. From where you learn CP? I learned CP just from online someplace, like, just solving problems, going through multiple like channels. Okay, I'll send you one good channel. It is called Abdul Bari. But it is for people who already know a bit of C++ and programming in general, like Abdul Bari. So yeah. Okay, how do you got access on of C-Line? Chrome download? No, Sriram. That's not, Chrome is unrelated to this. So I got access because I'm a student. You can also get an access to CLAN if you're a student. Like there's something called GitHub Students Pack. Like you can get that, and that will give you free CLAN. In which channel of Discord should we tag you for reviewing code? You can just tag me like anywhere, honestly. Like just tag me in the text channel maybe. Oh, my name, Rashtra, my name is Srivats. Again, I'll send that in chat. You know what, I'll just share my LinkedIn with you. I'll just send this in the chat. So yeah, you can take a look at my LinkedIn. Algo series of Abdul sir, yes. Algo series of Abdul sir. Preeta says, why am I the only person who finds Abdul Bari confusing? I have no idea, honestly. Because he's very, very clear. Like he's one of the best teachers out there. Okay, how long are you doing CP? I have been doing CP for like 5 years, honestly. Okay. Our races, will all maths be taught here? Yes, all the maths will be taught here that you need. But again, I would suggest, like after you learn the basic math from us, I just suggest exploring stuff on your own. Also, thank you, Vineet. Thanks a lot. Will there be any class on how to use template effectively in CP? Okay, first of all, templates are very, very simple. Like, this is my entire template, right? This is my entire template. I'll explain how this works. But 2 of these are just constant values that I generally use. I use hash define int long long, and like this is just fast IO, stuff like that, right? Like I will explain all of this in the future class. Don't worry, this is very, very simple. You might see huge 200-line templates, but those are just pretty stupid, honestly. Like you never need them. Like I have never needed to use anything except what I already have here. So yeah, don't worry too much about templates. Where to learn permutations and combinations? So hey, honestly, just like you can learn them as you like solve problems. Like because permutation combinations, like you just learn them from wherever you can, like just wherever you need to learn, right? So if you need to learn some topic like stars and bars, you learn stars and bars. But if you want, you can try Googling. How to use libraries like the advanced level competitive programmers use. It's not very hard. Like, I technically have a library, but I'm not going to explain it now, sadly. Okay, can you leave? You leave now? Yes, everyone can leave now, by the way. If you don't have any doubts, you are free to leave. Also, don't worry, this will not get trimmed. They will not be trimming this part out. Thank you very much, Sriram. I'll try to improve that. Can you please make a video on how to use CF and CodeChef? There will be a session on this separately. Don't worry about this. Can you explain about IDE and what you use and how can we install similar, what packages? So for CLAN, it's very simple. Like I have 2 things. I have something called MSys and I also have CLAN, that's it. So like MSys is for all C++ stuff. Like this has all versions of C++, everything, like everything you need about C++. And CLAN is the IDE. That's it. That's all I use, honestly. Okay. Let me see. Is there anything else? Thanks a lot, Vineet. Okay. I want to solve advanced problems on CodeChef and Codeforces. Okay. Users have to solve more problems. Don't worry, we'll be solving advanced problems very soon. Okay. Codeforces or CodeChef for beginners? I'd honestly say neither. Like CodeChef starter contests are fine. But do AtCoder. Do AtCoder, that's way better. Thank you, Girish, by the way. Okay. Will you be telling us which CP platforms to practice questions on, like CodeChef or Codeforces? Like we will be giving you the daily tasks from a combination of CodeChef, Codeforces, and AtCoder, but and LeetCode. But you can practice from anywhere. Like, but I would recommend doing AtCoder or CodeChef in general. How much time on average required to reach expert? And yes, you have great teaching skills. Thank you very much, Nikhil. I would say like for me, it took 2 years. But to be fair, I had like no guidance. I had no guidance from the beginning. nothing like that. So it will not take as long for you probably. But I don't know, honestly. It depends a lot from person to person. Like I can't predict anything, unfortunately. Thank you, Surinder, and thank you, Kunal. And thank you, Shubham. Thanks a lot. Okay, info about GitHub student package. What all do we need in this course? Like, you mean to get GitHub students package, you just need a college ID, a valid college ID. That's it. Okay, difference between DSA and CP. DSA is like linked lists. Like DSA is just the core algorithms and data structures. Like you have segment trees, maybe tries, stuff like that. But CP is just the application of them, right? DSA is the concept themselves, but CP is the application and also participating in contests during like with time pressure and stuff like that. So DSA is just the vague topics and like CP is the application of that DSA. Okay. Topics would be covered in maths, which topics covered in basic course. So in this basic course, we'll be covering like primality tests, LCM, GCD, modular math, etc. College email ID. Yeah, you need college email ID for GitHub student pack. Yes. Thank you so much, Arun Kumar. And thank you, Arvind. Thank you, Subrat. Thanks, Alok, Laksha. And yeah, bye, everyone. And yeah, if anyone has any doubts, you can let me know. Like, and you're free to leave, by the way. Again, you're very free to leave. Like, you can leave right now if you'd like. Yeah. If anyone has any doubts, you can stay back and ask any doubts if you have any. Yeah. Bye, everyone. I'll just wait for 2 minutes and then we'll be ending the session. Okay. Rishi says, will we be getting support if we get stuck while solving problems on Codeforces or any other platform? Yes, that is in fact why TLE exists. TLE exists so that you can ask doubts whenever you want, right? You can just ping TLE heads and ask doubts. That's how it works. Can you post the practice questions on the channel? Yes, I will post the PPT itself on the channel. The daily tasks will also be sent. Thank you very much, Sudhir. Okay, by the way, okay, 1 second. I did forget one thing, in fact, which is to share a feedback form. I'll share it soon, actually. Are templates useful? Templates are useful when they are, when they are customized for your needs, right? So they are not useful when you just copy paste from someone else. Ashish says college ID is used for what purpose? For GitHub student pack. Okay, Jignesh says course instructor for TLE daily doubt sessions. I'm not sure, but it's not me. Like it'll be like a random people, like random TAs. Arun says, if I had good upper hand in CP, can I crack HFT? Yes, you can. You can do that. Thanks a lot, Ray. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. And yeah, I'll be seeing you next time. Okay, once again, Nikhil has asked something. Can you recommend some questions for beginner level, like share some link? Yes, that will be sent during the daily tasks, Nikhil. Don't worry about that. Like you don't need anything separate, right? Like you will get it during the daily tasks. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone, and see you again next class, which is hopefully in a few days. Okay, bye.